Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Outer Development Assessment Panel meeting. Declare the meeting open at 9:30 and acknowledge that we are hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development Assessment Panel's Regulations 2011. Members are reminded to announce their name and title prior to speaking. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them in considering the information before them. My name is Clayton Hyam. I'm the presiding member for today's panel meeting. We have Karen Hyde, the deputy presiding member, Agatha Kavanagh, the specialist member, and for the first part of the meeting, councillors Smith and Huntley from the City of Wanneroo, followed by councillors Weidenbar and Dewan from the City of Cockburn. No apologies, no members on leave of absence, and minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving to part B of the meeting, I'm seeking a declaration of due consideration. All members familiar with the material before you today, if you could show of hands, please. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillors, did this go to a council meeting?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest then? No. Thank you. We'll go on to the item, which is the proposed neighbourhood centre at Expedition Drive in Clarkson. Have a presenter, Matthew Kane from Planning Solutions. Matthew.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you very much. And good morning, panel members, councillors and officers. My name is Matthew Kane from Planning Solutions, and we act on behalf of the landowner development. You can see in the RA, Planning Solutions actually listed as the owner. That's an administrative error. We don't own the property, my clients do. Notwithstanding, we're very pleased to see the city's responsible authority report recommendation for conditional approval. We've had a long engagement with the city on this site and this development, starting back in 2022 and through the initial preparation of the LDP. Our clients instructed us to prepare. That was approved in April 2023, and subsequently we've then moved to the development application stage. Fundamentally, as the city's RA says, the development has put forward to you today for approval consistent entirely with the built form, the scale, the intent of the LDP. We've reviewed the conditions and advice notes, and as set out in my interpretation summary, there are a few minor modifications that we're asking the members to consider today. I'd just like to talk through those briefly. In relation to condition 3, which talks to the capacity numbers of the childcare premises, the 90 children and 10 staff. Whilst we have no issue with the number of children permitted, and don't oppose that component of the condition, as with many childcare centres that our company is involved with and seeks approval for, we have identified a consequence of the city's suggested condition, including a restriction on staff numbers. I've set those reasons out in my RA, but in my presentation summary, but I'll just briefly talk to those. The Education and Care Services National Regs 2012 sets out specific minimum requirements for carers and educators within these facilities. That's based on the minimum number of children to staff ratio, and therefore there is separate legislation that already covers that. When we initially gave the city some indication of children numbers, staff numbers, medical centre practitioners, vets, which are other conditions laid out with this, That was very early on in the development stage, and subsequently we did not get an opportunity to look at the conditions beforehand. If we had, we would have raised with the city that there is a regulation that sets out those requirements. The particular issue we have with the condition is that by suggesting that 10 staff are permitted at any one time, as you might be aware, childcares operate generally on a shift basis, morning and afternoon staff, some full-time, some part-time, and therefore there's likely to be, during non-peak hours, changeover of staff, and often, 10, 15, 20 staff on site through a changeover period. So it's very restrictive to suggest that we have 10 staff on site at any one time. Fundamentally, I think the conditions generally related to the control of parking, and as per the RAR, car parking is demonstrated to be acceptable. And when considered with the new rates set out in the WAPC planning manual for non-residential parking, that's actually at the higher end for the overall site of the facility, what we're providing. Additionally, as referenced in that deputation summary, there's several instances where we personally, with the City of Wanneroo through the DAP, had the condition removed, restricting staff numbers, and that's been upheld unanimously by the DAP. In relation to condition 4, no issue with the intent of the condition controlling operating hours, but like many facilities, they often start with children there from 6:30 a.m. through to 6:30 p.m. So we'd ask that the DAP members just make a minor adjustment to bring that forward 30 minutes from both the start and closing times. In relation to condition 13, this is somewhat linked to condition 3 as well, which the condition, the intent of is to make sure that staff bays for the childcare are marked and signposted. But again, with the restriction on staff numbers, the fact that at many times throughout the day or the week, there will be more staff members on site as changeovers occur. And simply the function of a commercial centre like this, it's not a single childcare centre where I could understand the reasonable application of a condition on having signposted bays for staff versus visitors or parents. This is a large neighbourhood centre facility. There's a significant number of parking bays provided, and restricting them to certain bays, there's a question of what happens outside of normal hours, on weekends, and when there's staff changeover. So it's in our view unreasonable. Finally, just with condition 22, I've not seen this condition before, and it doesn't seem to have a planning purpose and is somewhat unreasonable, particularly with a condition having a 7-day time frame on the approval. Our client assures me that at first instance of any kind of vandalism or graffiti on a building, they're out there making sure that that's managed, but that's a management and operational aspect. That's not something that should be captured, and I can't see anything in the city's framework that would reasonably request or require the condition. Fundamentally, you've got a RAR that says that this development is entirely consistent with the planning framework. We largely have no objection to the conditions otherwise, and we acknowledge that some matters need some further technical reporting to be done, and that will be done and submitted prior to moving. Thank you very much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Matthew.
Recommendation of approval.
Thank you. Members of the panel, are there questions of Matthew?
I do. Thank you, Presiding Member. Karen Hyde speaking. Just with regard to your request to change the hours of operation in condition 4, does the acoustic reporting and noise management measures take account of that earlier opening time adequately?
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. Condition 17 requires a revised acoustic report. D covers full capacity modelling, and that could be amended to cover any additional requirements of the earlier operating hours. I did actually have a look at several childcare centres just in the immediate vicinity, and they all pretty much open at 6:30. But we can't see any concern with that, and it can be managed with children inside if required, but that would be subject to a revised report.
Further questions? No questions from the councillors?
No.
No, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And to the officers, Greg, you.
Thank you. I'll just quickly go through some of the conditions. We don't really oppose removal of condition 3. It's an integrated centre. Mostly we apply that condition around staff parking to address single sites where there is a reduced parking provision, and we want to ensure that the staff have appropriate parking on site. Given this integrated centre, it's less of a need, although there is an overall parking shortfall. It's should be manageable, and we don't require the space to be marked either. The operating hour of condition 4, that is as per the application on page, I think 11 of attachment 12. The applicant has stated that the operating hours will be 7 to 7. The noise report itself doesn't deal with anything outside of those hours. So our recommendation is just to slightly modify condition 4, which is to say that subject to written agreement, modified as with written agreement of the city, and then an advice note perhaps just to simply say that subject to modified acoustic report that demonstrates compliance with the requirement, legislative requirements. The city will consider modification of the operating hours, because at this time we don't have a noise report that demonstrates that it complies outside of 7 to 7. In relation to condition 13, that one I mentioned can fall away along with condition 3. In relation to condition 22, I do believe that this serves a planning purpose. We do apply it to our commercial centres. 7 days obviously is quite short, but it does give us the opportunity to raise issues of graffiti with the owners at a very early stage, particularly if the graffiti is somewhat sensitive and offensive in nature. And it really just gives us the ability to start taking a compliance action. A lot of good operators do, deal with it very quickly, but as centres age and they become a bit more warning, say, it does help us managing the situation if it does evolve further. So that's the reason for the condition. It's a sort of a long-term strategy. We're not really expecting to have to use it in the early stages with centres. And that's it from the. Otherwise, happy with the proposal in terms of its consistency with the LDP and the planning framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Questions of the officers? Ms. Karen.
Thank you. Karen Hyde speaking. Mr. Baring, sorry, would you mind just repeating what you were suggesting in terms of an advice note to go with that modified wording that you suggested for condition 4? What did you have in mind for an advice note?
Along the lines of advice note to state, in relation to condition 4, a revised acoustic report is to be provided demonstrating compliance with the relevant regulations, noise regulations, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Should that be part of that condition and not an advice note? Because the condition restricts it from 7 to 7.
Correct, yeah. So I was indicating to add to that with the term subject to written agreement with the City of Wanneroo. Modify the condition to add those words and then an advice note, or it could be just one whole condition instead of an advice note.
I just have one other question, please. In relation to condition 22, what's the head of power for that particular condition that you've included? Is there a policy framework?
Yeah, so we deal with the colours, materials, finishes of buildings. If they're modified, then we can take action. There's amenity provisions in the part 67 of the regulation. So I feel it does serve a planning purpose. It is material to the appearance, the amenity of the centre. I just do not agree with the comments made in the deputation along not having a planning merit.
Thank you. And just to follow up to that, would you be comfortable with the removal of the words within 7 days?
If the DAP members feel that the reason for 7 days, as was stated, but it can be a longer time or it can be just a general condition.
Yes, yes. Okay, lovely. Thank you. No
Further questions?
No.
Greg, in the RAR, under the landscaping section or tree canopy, you suggest that, well, there is a shortfall of 20 trees and say, as such, an increased number of shade trees are to be provided within the detailed landscaping plan. And you did condition 14, which deals with that. There's no reference to increased trees. Is this the way we can incorporate that in that condition?
And that would be, I would support that modification. Thank you for spotting that inconsistency.
Perhaps if you could think of some words to incorporate there, and we might come back to you.
Thank you. Will do.
Further questions?
No.
Matthew's indicated something he wants to say about trees.
Very briefly, presiding member, sorry, just to draw your attention, yes, there is that note in the report, but the landscape plan submitted clearly notes there are 72 provided on site. So I think that's an error, I think, in the assessment rather than anything.
I'll
gone through diligently and counted them on a landscape plan on Friday, and apologies for not raising it beforehand, but as it's not in the condition, it wasn't captured.
Is that something you would concur with?
Sorry, I just missed what the speaker was saying just now.
Go again.
Sorry, Greg, just to clarify, the landscape plan, I don't believe it's actually an attachment to the report. I've got a copy here if the presiding member wanted to see it, but it states there are 72 trees proposed for the site. So I'm not sure how the report covers that, but then doesn't capture it in the condition. Like we're compliant as proposed.
Aaron, I just need to confer quickly with my colleague here. Just my colleague here, Aaron Jones, will just comment on that.
Sorry, Matt. If I can't, as you say, see the landscaping plan in the attachments relating to the 72 trees. But if that is the case, then I'd be fairly comfortable with the condition in itself requiring a revised landscaping plan to already detail those 72 trees, and as such, the city would be comfortable with the number of trees provided on site.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Further questions of the officers? No. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the item itself. I have a recommendation for approval with conditions.
Sorry, Chair. Could I ask a question of the presenter? Sorry, I've thought of one since.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Oh,
Thank you. So it's not a question per se from the conditions point of view. It's a bit more of a discussion point. I noticed that the design and aesthetics went through the panel before with the city, and there were some modifications of the colours and things like that to make it more softer in terms of reflecting, I guess, the natural habitat. And I've seen that in terms of they've incorporated more pastels, and they used a coastal kind of beach picture as, I guess, their inspiration in there. I just wanted to note that it's giving off a bit of an army vibe, just in terms of all the colours and things like that. And so it would be nice to have some more teals or blues or things in there as well, just from a perspective of, you know, that as well. So if there's any opportunity to increase maybe some of the different pastels in there as well, because there's lots of greys and those army greens in there as well. So that's just something I wanted to note, because I do kind of have a bit of a reaction sometimes to the different colours. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you for that, councillor. Greg, do you have a comment to make on that?
The colours and materials are specified, I think, in the application. So we'll be referring to those for the through the building permitting process.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions of the officers? Okay, thank you very much. We'll move to the item recommendation approval with conditions. We can come back and deal with any amendments later. So is there a mover for the published recommendation? Councillor Huntley, thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Karen, thank you. Okay, Councillor Huntley, over to you.
Thank you. I'm very happy with this. It does comply to all the rules. It's very much needed on that Catalina estate. I do feel there is certainly an increased amount of homes and not very many places to go. So this actually just having the food shops and certainly coffee shops and being able to do your shopping there, obviously, plus the veterinary and plus the childcare, I have no issues whatsoever. I think this will be good for the community. I am happy to relook at the conditions and obviously remove condition 3, remove condition 13. I'm happy that the advice note, or however we're going to do that, related to 6:30, because I think most childcare start at 6:30, and that is going to be an issue if we do pass it for 7 a.m. I do think the tree situation, if there's 72 trees, happy with condition 14. And also condition 22, this has been a bugbear actually for quite a few developers. The city does word this quite harshly because it says shall be removed within 7 days. So graffiti shall be, which is like a must. And I think that's the issue here. So I'm happy to pop in there 30 days, or if presiding member, if Karen has a different wording to actually remove the amount of days, I'd be happy with that as well. So other than that, yeah, I'm more than happy to support this, and yeah, hope the panel will support it too.
Thank you, councillor. Karen.
Thank you. Yes, I concur with everything that the mover has spoken about. I find this to be an appropriate development. It's consistent in layout terms with the LDP. I know there were some comments from the DRP, but I think time has moved on now that we take this as we find it. It has been modified significantly in response to the DRP comments. So thank the applicant for working with the city on that. I think it is important to provide that interaction surveillance with Kuranda Drive, and there are a number of conditions that refer to that. So very supportive of those to ensure that that passive surveillance and activation is delivered. And following on from the questions of the officers and so forth, I'm comfortable with the parking provisions given reciprocity and the walkable catchment, and also the diversity of the peak hours for parking demand, and other matters raised by community in terms of waste and odour and noise, I find can be adequately managed through the technical reporting and approvals by the city and other environmental legislation. But I would like to move an amending motion, please, presiding member. Subject to your comfort with this, I'd suggest to move them en bloc. I would like to, condition 3, delete the words "and 10 staff." For condition 4, I would like to replace the notation of hours currently at 7 to 7 to 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Monday to Friday continued. With condition 13, I would like to delete that condition, and with condition 22, I would like to delete the words within 7 days of being approved. And I'm suggesting a new condition that would say, in relation to conditions 4 and 17, a revised acoustic report and noise management strategy to be prepared, demonstrating requirements relative to legislation to the satisfaction of the city.
Mind repeating that one?
Yes, so this would be a new condition rather than modifying conditions 4 and 17, but it would say, in relation to condition 4 and 17, a revised acoustic report and noise management strategy to be submitted, to be prepared and applied, demonstrating requirements, meeting requirements relative to regulation to the satisfaction of the city. I'm not sure that my grammar is that good on that one.
We can
If I may,
try and get it on the screen, I think, if we can.
Thanks.
Correct?
oh,
Yes.
sorry, condition 17 already requires a revised acoustic report. Perhaps it's a modification of that condition as opposed to a separate condition, because that one is the fact that there are issues with that condition when we, or with that noise report that were identified in the assessment.
Okay.
Perhaps what I'll do is put that one aside for the time being.
Okay.
And we'll
yes,
go
sure.
back to conditions 3. Might actually deal with them separately, I think, because is there a second for the changes to condition 3 to take out N10 staff? A seconder for that.
Yep.
Councillor Hunt, thank you. Is there any discussion on that needed? No, okay, I'll put that all in favour.
Sorry, can I ask, are you doing them separately or?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah, cool.
So all in favour of that change to condition 3?
Yeah, okay.
Yep, thank you, that's unanimous. We'll move to condition 4. Karen has recommended a change to the hours to be 6:30 to 6:30. Is there a seconder for that?
Question.
Yes.
With that change on the PM, should that actually remain as 7 PM? Because 6:30 is going to be early for people coming up or using the freeway to get back in time. So I don't know whether that 7 PM is there for a reason, but certainly 6:30 in the morning it does need to be 6:30 to sort of complement every other childcare centre and to get the children to school on time as well if you're dropping younger ones off.
Councillor, that was the request of the applicant, 6:30 to 6:30.
Oh, was it? So I wasn't sure if he wanted to leave that at 7. So he's happy to change that to 6:30.
Leave it at 6:30, but if the council would like to give people an extra 30 minutes, that's fine.
I'm more than happy to give them an extra 30 minutes just to stop the complaints coming in.
This stage, I've got a recommendation to amend it to 6:30 to 6:30 from Karen. Is there a seconder for that, or?
Presiding member,
Yes.
I'm happy to withdraw the 6:30 to 6:30 and move a 6:30 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion on that? No, I'll put that all in favour. Unanimously, thank you. Okay, moving on to delete condition 13. Is there a seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Huntley, thank you. Is there any discussion needed on that? I'll put that. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Now, we're at condition 22. Which
I moved to modify the wording of the presiding member to delete the words
7 days.
within 7 days of it being applied. So it would actually read, any graffiti applied to the external surfaces of the building shall be removed, comma, to the satisfaction of the City of Wanneroo.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Huntley, thank you. Is there any discussion on that? Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I just want to put on the record, in terms of, I guess, opposition to removing dates on that. It's a issue in the city in terms of graffiti and actually having compliance and sometimes people to actually address it. I've had a big lot of graffiti that has taken over 3 months to actually get compliance on, which is incredibly frustrating. And so, and that's way beyond what the limit was, which I think is beyond 7 days. So for me, we're often finding it, I guess, in sometimes extreme situations that the time it takes is much longer anyway. So for me, I don't mind the process starting even at 7 days or 14 days, because it sometimes takes a very long time for actually the outcome to be achieved. And we know that the longer that graffiti is there, it encourages other people. So this is one that I will constantly fight for accountability and tighter timeframes, even if they might not necessarily met, because it helps try and get an outcome sooner for the community.
Thank you. Further speakers? Karen, did you want to speak as the member?
Thank you, presiding member. I mean, I understand and sympathise with Councillor Smith's considerations and her local knowledge of this. However, I do think within 7 days is rather prescriptive, and accepting that, as Mr. Bowring said, the scheme and policies do cover materiality. I'm not sure that there's anything in the planning framework that specifies, that sort of time frame. I think we do have within this condition, as I propose to modify, to the satisfaction of the City of Wanneroo. So we do have that enforcement opportunity there. And I think, therefore, some level of flexibility for property owners to make sure that they've got the right materials, the right process, that they're not rushed into applying some unpleasant paint over the top of graffiti, but that it's done in an appropriate way for the materiality of the particular location is important. And if that takes a little bit of time, then I think that perhaps would allow for a better outcome. But again, as I say, this condition, as I propose to amend, still has to the satisfaction of the City of Wanneroo. So there is still that enforcement capability there within the condition.
Any further speakers on this amendment? Councillor Huntley.
Yeah, look, just to say that, yes, we do have a graffiti problem in the city. But when it occurs, I have never, ever seen graffiti be removed within 7 days. And this is, this is quite strongly worded. It does say that it shall be removed within 7 days. It doesn't say the process shall be started. It says it will be removed. And that is almost nigh on impossible for this to happen. I don't think we have had one graffiti removed within 7 days. So, and like Councillor Smith said, sometimes it goes on for 12 to 14, 18 weeks before graffiti gets removed. I think the worst thing is when somebody does remove it fairly quickly within about 12 days, and then someone comes and repaints it again. So there are issues, and then of course people think that it hasn't been removed, but it's already been removed once, and it's happened again. It's a difficult situation, but I think it is up to the businesses to sort it. And I totally agree with Deputy Chair that there is an issue with the fact that sometimes they really need to think about what they're going to do and how they're going to prevent it happening again. It is costly to remove, and it's costly to keep off as well. Just that anti-graffiti paint is very, very expensive, and whether they would actually plaster over it, paint over it, or put the more anti-graffiti stuff over, I'm not sure. So I do think it should be left. I don't think anybody in the city wants graffiti on their walls. So if it is a business, and these are businesses, those shopping centres will, I think, act pretty quickly to get it off. That is not something that they want in their development. So I am happy to actually remove the amount of days, because I just think that compliance-wise, it's nigh on impossible to do it in 7 days. So yeah, very happy with the Deputy Chair's decision to remove the days.
Councillor Smith, are you looking to speak a second time?
If that's possible.
I'll allow it.
Thank you. This issue has come up in many of our DAPs previously before. And I think on many occasions there's been a compromise from 7 to whether it's 14 or 21, which I've actually compromised on. So happy to go to a compromise, but if a number is just totally taken out, then I will remain in my position. So.
Thank you. Look, I support the amendment, but I agree entirely with the sentiments of Councillor Smith. This needs to be removed as quickly as possible. The difficulty I find with 7 days, or any number necessary, is that the landowner will be in breach of their approval very quickly. And I think there is a danger in allowing that to happen all the time. I am concerned that we are making it so difficult for the landowner to comply with his approval, her approval, their approval. So I'm quite happy to support the amendment. So I'll go, and no further speakers. I'll go back to Karen as the mover to wind up the debate on the amendment.
Thank you. I've nothing further to add. I've appreciated everybody airing their thoughts on this. I'm very comfortable with the amendment as proposed and seconded.
I'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Against? That's carried 4-1. Now, there was one further additional condition.
Yes.
Condition 24.
There was, however, I'm comfortable to report that proposal and amend condition 17 as Mr. Bowring has suggested. But I want the presiding member with Mr. Bowring provide a few appropriate words.
I'm sure he will. Mr. Bowring.
Thank you. We've got a modified wording. Sorry, where did I put it? Simply to modify condition 17 with an item, add an item F to state operating hours of the childcare premises. So essentially, the revised report must include, but not be limited to, the following: A through F, including operating hours of the childcare premises.
Thank you, Mr. Bowring. Appreciate your input. Yes, I'm happy to move that. Please,
Right.
presiding member.
I will seek a seconder for that amendment.
Yes, I think as per my earlier question, I was a little concerned that the noise management and acoustic reporting had not taken account of variations of operating hours that the proponent was looking for. I have no issue with those operating hours, as we have agreed through amending motion. However, I do want to ensure that the technical reporting takes consideration of that doors opening and closing and all of those sorts of things, staff arriving, etc. So I'm comfortable with adding this to the requirements for that acoustic report. Thank you.
As seconder of the amendment, Councillor Huntley.
I fully agree with Deputy Chair there. No worries. Yeah.
Any further
That's fine.
speakers? Are there further speakers on that amendment? No. Okay, then I'm going to put the amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Floor still with you, Karen, on the substantive motion.
As I previously stated, I'm quite comfortable with it, presiding member, and with the amendments, I think that's a comprehensive set of conditions and should support the approval.
Speakers?
Yep. Happy.
Okay, all right. Look, I'm fully supportive of the proposal as well, and I don't think I need to labour the point. It all that complies with the planning framework and I think it's a good outcome for the location. So there's no further speakers. I will go back to the mover, Councillor Huntley, to close the debate.
Yes, I am happy that it complies with the framework. Very happy with the conditions. I hope to see this go up very soon. So fantastic. Please support it.
Thank you. The motion as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you to the two councillors for your attendance and the officers.
Thank you.
We'll move on to part C. Got Councillor Dewan and Councillor Weidenbach.
Morning.
Morning.
Okay. All right, just go through some, welcome anyway, go through some preliminaries. Declaration of due consideration A, all members familiar with the material. Part C. Okay, thank you. Noting that we did get a written submission from this morning, circulated this morning. It was about 5 lines. Councillor Dewan, did you see that?
I have not seen the morning one. I'm sorry.
All right. There would have been an email to you this morning.
I will quickly check.
Screen quickly.
Bring it up on the screen quickly if you like.
Yeah.
There it is.
Give me just 30 seconds.
By all means.
Yeah. Yeah, I've read it. Thank you.
Very much. Okay, so I'll take declaration of due consideration. We're all familiar with the material before us. Show of hands, please, for that. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest? Council, did this go to a council meeting?
No.
No, thank you very much. All right, so there are no disclosures of interest. Thank you. All right, move on to the item. We have a presentation from Ms. Kennedy. Screen ready. Yeah, Chris.
Thank you, Chair, for your time. As most of you would be aware, my name's Chris Kennedy from Able Royal Group. I'm here to talk about our shopping centre site in Hammond Park. You might recall that was approved, I think it was last year. That time does fly, but I think it was last year. We're here, what we've done is lodged a minor application. There are two key elements to this minor application. The first element is we want to amend the plan to make provision for a kiosk facility. And that facility is within the existing mall area of the shopping centre, so it's no increase in the floor area, it's within the building envelope. I believe from reading the RA that the city is supportive of that element, which we are delighted with. I think there might be a question technically as to how it is approved, but I hope we can resolve that. And look, the other key element, of course, relates to signage and specifically pylon signs. So in terms of the plan that is in front of you now, there are two key signage elements that we require. And when I say we require, it's actually our lead tenant, which is Woolworths. There is one 9-metre pylon sign to the Wajik Street frontage there that you can just make out. And there is another 6-metre sign to the Wattle Up Road frontage. Those two pylons you'll see are basically centrally placed in terms of the frontage. Okay. So look, we're aware that that the signage, the proposed heights exceed the policy. What we would make clear is these signage heights are actually consistent with what we've had approved elsewhere. And in actual fact, the signs that we've had, the pylon signs that we've had approved elsewhere are actually higher in some cases. But look, recognising the context of this site, what we're proposing, as I said, is 9 metres to Wajik Road instead of 12, 9 metres, and 6 metres to Wattle Up Road. Now, I mentioned context. I might just turn to a couple of plans. What you can see there is the proposed pylon sign in the context of the approved development to Wajik Road. I guess there's a couple of things that come to mind. That the height is consistent with the approved height of the building. In this area, the LDP provides for 8.5 metres to the street, but also 11.5 metres within the site. So on this basis, we think the height is appropriate as clearly shown by this plan. I'll just flip to a couple of others while I'm here. Yeah, so this is the approved LDP, which I mentioned. As you can see, the pylon sign is, as I said, centrally placed. You can see where the LDP, which is quite detailed, provides for 8.5 metres on either side to Wajak, 11 metres within the side, albeit to the west, as I said, and then 8.5 metres to the south. So our view is that, as I said, the signs are appropriate to this context. They're appropriate in scale when we consider what has been approved. My view is these signs will not be seen or visible from the east, the residential development to the east, or indeed from the development to the west once we have built out. There is the question of the development to the north on Wajak Road opposite. That is actually one of our developments. That is terrace, they are laneway lots. They are 2-storey terraces. So I think when we consider the height of those terrace houses as they are going up, I think the ridge heights, are close to 9 metres. So again, we think it's contextually appropriate. I'd also add again in relation to the Wajik Road frontage that the sign is on alignment with the adjoining development on either side as well. Okay. Just see that in that plan there. There is that space to the east of the pylon to Wadjuk Road, which is shown as, well, passive landscaping, I guess. That is a future stage of development, which we are seeking to proceed with. So again, you can see how that sign will fit within development on either side. Any questions?
Questions? Yes, councillor.
Thank you, through the chair. Thank you for your presentation, Chris. You did show a slide which said that the plan was approved by the City of Cockburn in 17th of August 2023. So I'm wondering as to why did the council not, why did we put the conditions in the first place? Of course, there could be a reason in terms of the local planning policy. I want to actually put this question to the City of Cockburn to answer that. What does that approval meant when you approved it for the 9-metre high pylon?
Councillor, we'll get to the officers after we've dealt with the applicant. So your question of the applicant is to do with the sign and the original approval, and why was it approved that way? Chris, are you able to throw any light on that?
Oh, look, I guess there's a couple of comments I would make. As I said at the beginning, initially we were proposing a 12-metre sign to Wadjuk Road, and to Wadjuk, I think it was 9 from memory. Since that approval, since that JDAP approval, we've had further discussion with our tenant. They really require 12 and 9. But look, I guess providing a bit of a balancing act here, we've said, well, look, we could go back and justify 9 to Wadjuk and 6 to Wattle Up Road. I think also what was put to us was the need to put something of a stronger case in terms of outlining the context of the site as a justification for these amended heights. So we're coming down from what we were asking for originally. We are compromising, and we're providing that additional feedback, and we've taken advice from our prospective tenant as well, Earl Woolworths.
Chris, from where are you trying to be seen? But in terms of the sign, what's the purpose of the extra height? How far back do you need to see the sign?
Well, we're taking, I guess we've been advised by our tenant, but we do need, obviously, the exposure along Wattle Up Road, the approaches east and west, and also what we require is the presence to Wadjuk Road as well, in terms of both approaches. The site, as you probably be aware, is not on a street corner. It's actually, it's unusual in that it's got dual frontage, but not a corner location. So I guess given that fact, there is a need for this signage so that the site can be seen from approaching roads. And also there's an element of wayfinding as well. Look, I don't have a specific figure of, needing to be seen from 500 metres, 400 metres.
But you indicated earlier that it would be built out east and west.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get my head around if it's 6 metres or 9 metres, it's already going to be built out.
Sure.
So the vehicles coming there are going to have passed those developments east and west before they see the sign.
Well, I guess the sign at 9 metres is slightly higher than the buildings that are approved to the street at Wadjuk Road, which are around 8.5. So there will be a slight height increase. And then, of course, once people arrive at the site, there'll be on display all the facilities that are available at that centre, centrally placed on that sign.
They'd see a 6 metre sign as well at once they're there.
Well, I guess they would, yes, yeah.
Further questions?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
So the maximum height of the residential buildings opposite Wadjuk, on the Wadjuk Road, is about 8.5 meters. Is it? And when they wake up, when they open their windows, they will see the signages from their homes. Even if they build, let's say, a terrace home. Is that correct, Chris?
In other words, are the tenants or the occupants of residential opposite, councillor? You're talking about opposite? From the upper stories, they're going to see the sign.
Yes, they will. But as I said, the sign, if we put a plan on the screen that showed street elevation for the sign, that sign is, in terms of the elevation, street elevation, is centrally placed. It is architecturally designed by the same architect of the building. So I'm not thinking it's an ugly sign.
Okay. It will be illuminated, I guess.
I'd have to check that in terms of what we put in, whether, if there's a condition that requires it's not be illuminated beyond certain hours, I'm sure it's something that we could accept.
Further questions, Karen?
Yes, thank you. I did also have a question about illumination because I did think I read somewhere that it was proposed to be an illuminated sign. You don't seem sure?
I don't. I'm not sure. But as I said, I think if there was a condition that required it be turned off beyond certain hours, then that would be something we could accept.
Okay, and you're showing a very black build, dark, subdued, somber materiality. And I think in your illustrations, you were showing the signage to be of a similar nature in terms of its colour and materiality. Can you confirm what it would look like?
Oh, look, I think that's probably more of a graphic representation. The reality is that the Woolworths panel, which would be the top panel of the pylon sign, will be the Woolworths green apple in their brand standard colours, and then the lower panels, which would be allocated to the specialty tenants, would be as per the tenants that those tenancies get leased to.
Right. Okay. And does the increase, because that's what you're showing in terms of the application, so that's kind of what would be approved if it were to be approved. Does this additional height impact any vegetation, any species that you proposed within the landscape on either Wadjuk Drive or Wattle Road?
From an overshadowing perspective.
Just placement of trees and the type and height and canopy and so forth. Okay. No further questions from me.
Yes, okay.
Just on that, sorry if I may, we've been working with the city on the approval of the landscape plan as part of our building permit process. My understanding is that has that plan been approved?
It has been.
Yeah, so that I think goes directly to your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agatha.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Well, I have a question in regard to the Wattle Road. If the signage could be erected at 6 meters on this road, why can't this be the same for the Wadjuk Drive then case? Because if we look at the location from the Wattle Road, it would be visible for the passing cars. And the same situation seemed to me on the Wadjuk Drive. So why is this difference of 3 meters then proposed?
Look, I think it's been driven by our prospective tenant. The other point I would make is to Wattle Road, there are already other pylon signs. So again, I think in terms of context, because there are already other pylon signs to Wattle Road, coming down in height, we thought would probably be more appropriate.
Wadjuk is also the primary entry to the centre.
So sorry, Chris, you're saying there are other pylon signs?
Yes.
In Wadjuk?
On Wattle Road.
Wattle.
Yes.
In that street block?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and are they 4 meters? Can you confirm that from time? Yeah, and then
allocated to future fast food, quick service retail tenancies.
Okay, so yeah, so for me, still, I just can't sort of see the justification for this decision, because I understand that the situation on both roads are very similar in terms of, you know, how many cars are passing and who's going to see this signage from, you know, whatever distance. So yes, still I think this is probably
Stick with questions at the moment. Okay, thank you.
Can I respond to it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think building on what Matt said, the future of Wattle Up Road is it will be downgraded. And there's a question about whether it will become left in, left out only to the extension of Hammond Road or roundabout. But what there is no debate about is it being downgraded and Wattle Up Road becoming, Wudgett Road becoming the major frontage. Yeah, and I think indeed the city can confirm that. Wudgett Road has been planned as a major road. Wattle Up Road currently is a rural road that's been sporadically upgraded to an urban road. But it will become, well, it is, and it will become a minor road.
Okay, thank you. Further questions of the applicant? No, thanks, gentlemen. Okay, we'll move to the officers.
Good morning.
Good morning. Did you want to make some comments or just take questions?
We just wanted to comment that the local planning policy is endorsed by council. The applicant has already received a variation to that policy, which is why we haven't been able to support, you know, further variation to that policy. We've also noted in the RA that there's with the building height being allowed at 11 metres to the rear, those signs that have been approved to the top of those buildings will provide that wayfinding from both of the roads, given that the topography of Wattle Up Road is this side is actually sort of on the lower part of the hill. So you're already going to be able to see those signs from Wattle Up Road as you're coming down the hill. And just, yeah, those buildings opposite, the two, well, they are two-storey. The wall heights are actually only 5.5 metres with a top of ridge at 7.2. So a 9 metre sign is still going to sit 2 metres higher than those buildings. So we just find the scale really inappropriate for the site.
And the illumination.
And the sign is illuminated, sorry.
I think we'd also just, in terms of the argument around wayfinding, I think in the context of this particular local centre, the city really does question that as a justification in today's context, in that this being the smallest in terms of the local centre hierarchies or the centre hierarchies, it's predominantly designed to have a catchment of the people that live within the area who may not really depend on signage to find their way to the centre. In today's context, people have Google Maps, people know where things are. This isn't designed as a centre that's supposed to draw in a catchment of people that don't live predominantly within the area. And as you may be aware from the previous responsible authority reports, the context of this particular site was that the structure plan amendment proposed quite a significant expansion to the site area. It was originally zoned residential. So from the city's perspective, it was never intended to be a district level centre or above. So, you know, the city doesn't really agree with the argument that this is required for wayfinding. If this was Cockburn gateways, sure, but not given this context of it being the lowest order in terms of the local centre hierarchy. And then to the point around the future status of the adjoining roads, I don't know if the city would really be in a position to make those comments yet, given they are dependent on decisions made at state government levels. We're assessing the planning framework at the time, we're assessing the context of the site as it currently stands. So the city does still hold its position as outlined in the RA, but we would be more than happy to take any further questions from panel members.
Thank you. Questions of the officers?
Yes, please, presiding member. Sorry, I just wanted to be a little bit pedantic so that I'm quite clear around your assessment and what's before us. So we have in the RAR a refusal for the proposals that the applicant is putting forward, the modifications, but those modifications actually include a kiosk as well as the signage. Then through the request for further information, you provided us with two alternates. I can see that alternate 2 would accept this as a Form 2 and approve everything, including the kiosk minor floor modifications and the signage modifications that the applicant has requested. But could you please explain what alternate 1 that you've provided does? Does that just approve the kiosk and minor floor modifications but not the signage, or am I misreading that?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Regulation 13 direction that was provided to us did ask for a recommendation that essentially separated the two aspects of this. As you'll see in our response, we did kind of, prior to providing that recommendation, we did make the point that at an officer level, we don't think it's appropriate to separate the two. The DAP currently has an application in front of it that it has to consider on its merits, and to sort of pick and choose what aspects of the proposal to approve essentially circumvents the fundamental question of, is this appropriate to approve in the first place? That being said, the city is of the view that the kiosk itself and those internal minor floor arrangements don't actually require development approval anyway. Clause 61 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Scheme Regulations 2015 exempt all minor works that don't materially impact the external facade of a development. So that kiosk arrangement doesn't require approval in the first place. So if the proponent wanted to continue with the kiosk arrangement or those minor internal floor modifications, they can do so without the city's approval, without the DAP approval, and notwithstanding any refusal or approval that the JDAP may provide today. So the city's view is that that doesn't need to be in this application altogether, as it is exempt works.
Right, so the amended condition actually that you proposed as part of the alternate 1 actually repeats the condition from condition 5 of the 2023 approval.
Yeah.
But with the addition of the central 6-metre pylon being removed, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. And I have a further question. If it were the decision of the panel to approve all of the modifications, including the signage, can you, the city, clarify, have you assessed this signage as illuminated or not? That's the first part of my question. And the second part of my question is, if it were illuminated, do you see that existing condition 18 of the 2023 proposal, which talks to Australian standards to avoid intrusive lighting effects, would actually apply to those illuminated signs, or would there need to be some other control over that?
Thanks. We'll just, if it's okay, just confer for 30 seconds and then. Thank you, panel member. So the city's understanding is that the Australian standards as it relates to the control of obtrusive outdoor lighting generally apply to things like floodlights in car parks and lighting that's affixed to buildings, not necessarily in this matter. But that being said, the original DAP approval did take into account the fact that these would be illuminated, and that was considered in the assessment. So in approving this as is, there would be an assumption that it's going to be illuminated as well.
All right, thank you for that answer.
Okay, further questions from panel members of the officers? No?
Nope, I'm okay, thanks.
Yes, okay, thank you. We'll move on. Thanks to the officers. We'll move on to the item. It is a published recommendation, well, to firstly accept the application, then to refuse it for the reasons as published there. Do I have a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Dewan, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Weidenbach, thank you. Councillor Dewan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So look, this development was initially approved, keeping in view certain conditions. And now, because the proponent is facing pressure from the tenants, there is a request for removing those conditions. Now, see, pylon height, which the proponent is proposing, I can fully understand that they want to attract customers who are driving through the Wodgett Drive. But as the city just mentioned, this original development was planned for the local community largely, and not as a district center. Anyway, having said that, the pylon signs which are illuminated are likely to be a visually distractive and intrusive, and they can obviously disrupt the natural environment of that residential area, which is on the right side of the Wodgett Drive. And the high pylon signs can also attract attention and can cause a risk to the vehicle drivers who are driving on the Wodgett Drive. So that's my second point. So, and of course, the light and noise disturbance, you cannot avoid that if it becomes busier. It was never designed to be a district place, but it could cause noise and of course, in the night, there could be distractions due to the illuminations of the signs. So it obviously does not meet the local planning policy of the city of Cockburn, even though the proponent has mentioned that they have done these signs elsewhere in the state, but then every suburb has a distinct character and a demographics, and we must respect that. And the developer should ensure compliance from the very outset of the approval that we granted them in December, I think 2024 or August 2024. So I would ask the panelists to please consider this and refuse the condition. Yes, I'm okay with the kiosk. Kiosk is fine, but in terms of the pylon sign height, I would request the panel to consider refusing the development, because it will destroy or rather impact adversely the amenity of the residential amenities that we have in that suburb of Hammond Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dewan. Councillor Weidenbach.
Yeah, I'd support. I think the pylon height is a bit over the top, and essentially I support the officer's recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Further speakers?
Thank you, Presiding Member. Karen Hyde speaking. Listen carefully to what Councillor Dewan had to say, and my difficulty in supporting the motion to outright refuse these modifications is that I think in doing so we would actually be refusing the minor floor modifications and the kiosk as well, because that's what the applicant is applying for within this form too. So I think leaving aside the issue of the height of the pylons, if, as Councillor Dewan is suggesting, there's some consideration of the kiosk being appropriate and working within the planning framework, I think we need to be very careful about what we are actually refusing and what we are approving in this instance. Hence my questions earlier to clarify with the officers in providing the alternate recommendations that one does indeed include approval of the kiosk and the minor modifications, but not the signage, and the other alternate does include approval of all. So my preference would be for the panel to consider those alternates within the RAR rather than this refusal. And so in that respect, I'm not supporting the primary recommendation within the RAR.
Thank you. Further speakers? No, I'm happy to. I understand what Ms. Hyde is saying, and I agree with the comment she's making. That was the reason for the R13 request in the first place, and I think I just don't see that we can refuse the entry mall kiosk here, and then it can be then approved through a building licence process. So I am concerned. So I won't be supporting the recommendation that's currently on the table for refusal, but I would happily support any alternate recommendation that looked at refusal of the signs and approval of the kiosk. So,
Can I? Sorry.
Yes, Councillor. Well, I'll go back to you as the mover to wind up the debate. Sorry.
Look, yeah, I just wanted to add from my point of view, I would support the proposal to the minor modification of the kiosk. But I'm happy to hand over conditions in terms of pylon signage.
Okay. All right, thank you. So back to you, Councillor Dewan, to wind up the debate on this current one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I wind up, is it possible to move an alternate motion at this point so that we consider the kiosk as all right, and then hang on?
Do you think it'd be best if we deal with this one? Yeah, I think we're better off dealing with this one, Councillor, getting it out of the way, clean slate, and then we go again with an alternate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So look, as I said earlier, 50% of the recommendation is okay, but then 50% is not recommended. And as everybody has mentioned, that the pylon sign is going to be intrusive. It could possibly cause accident, and that's why I'm supporting it. But at the same time, I would like to make the panelists very clear that I'm not against the pylon. So how you word it and how the minute clerk will take it, I really don't understand. But yeah.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Against? That's lost. So I'm seeking an alternative motion. An alternative motion.
Presiding member, thank you, Karen Hyde speaking. I'm going to move alternate one that has been provided through the RAR request for regulation 13, which would accept this as a Form 2, noting that a number of the modifications, not all of the modifications, but a number of them are minor, and to approve those modifications to the floor plates and to the kiosk as per the attached plans. However, to amend condition 5, which would restate the earlier approval from 2023 to reduce the original proposal of the pylon signs and to therefore maintain them at 6 metres on Wadjuk Drive and 4 metres on Wattleup Road, but also to remove that central pylon of 6 metres on Wattleup Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go on, is there a seconder for the yes, Councillor Dewan, thank you. Okay. Karen, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I've read the applicant and the primary operators proposals to us. I'm not swayed by any of that discussion that they provided. These are significant signs anyway, 6 metres and 4 metres. It is a neighbourhood centre. It did start, I think, in the planning framework as a local, and it's turned into a neighbourhood. So, but you know, the amount of signage, and I think you provided me with clarity that none of the signage is obscured or whatever by the landscape. That's all been taken into account and fits within the signage. It's a relatively straight road. There's no kinks and diversions. Visibility is good. I find that there should be adequate within the overall square meterage proposed for the primary operator and those ancillary tenancies within the current approval that was discussed at length, I gather, back in 2023. Nor am I swayed by a discussion about what has been approved in other local governments or in other centres. I've considered this on its absolute merits and specifically within the context. And note that you said, well, the illumination of signs can be switched on and switched off, but that's mitigating something which perhaps would be causing a problem. 3 metres is significant. You know, that's effectively a 3-storey building height. So my reason for moving this alternate is that I believe that the current approval is a good one, but accept that you've made some modifications to the layout, and therefore the kiosk element and some other minor tweaks to the floor layout should be acceptable under this Form 2 approval, and that will give you consistency and certainty as you move forward through the building permit process. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Dewan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. So let me understand that, I mean, I was reading very clearly. So the Deputy Presiding Officer moved a motion that is exactly the same as on page number, I can't see the page number, which was moved by our officers. Or is there any variation in that alternate? I just wanted to understand that before I speak to the motion.
Sorry, I'm happy to repeat, Councillor Dewan, that what I have proposed is from the response to the R13. It is the first alternate that the officers have provided, which would approve the kiosk and some other little minor modifications to floor plates, but would not approve the applicant and operator's request to increase the signage along height of signage along Wadjuk Drive and Wattle Road, but to keep those heights along Wadjuk Drive at 6 metre and Wattle Road at 4 metres, and to remove the central pylon proposed for 6 metres on Wattle Road. That's what I've moved and spoken to.
Thank you.
It's on your screen.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I'm happy with that, and I just endorse what has been moved now, keeping in view the residential character of the amenities, and also not to set a precedent for the upcoming developments all around the state, especially Cockburn. We want to keep Cockburn as beautiful and as aesthetic for our residents, and also be mindful of the people that stay on the right side of the Wadjuk Drive, not to see big sign when they wake up in the morning, rather than they should see a blue sky and sunny days. Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers to the alternate motion? No? Speak to that? No? Okay. Look, I'm more than happy to support this alternate motion. I am not, well, the policy is one thing, and policies are just due regard documents. But in this case, when you look at the context in which this is placed and the size of the neighbourhood centre, it's a small centre, the fact that we have residential properties or houses to be built and being built opposite, I think there is an issue of amenity here. most of all, I'm not convinced by the justification to go higher. I don't understand the need other than just to be bigger and to be seen. I think it'll be seen far enough from the sign anyway. So I'm more than happy to support the alternate motion. Back to you.
Nothing further to say.
Nothing.
Happy to close debate. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now put the alternate motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. To move on, there's no SAT reconsiderations and part B of the business. There are a list of SAT applications, and I close the meeting at 10:55. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dad.